All right, so today we're ditching those glossy film school pamphlets and grabbing, well, maybe a toolbox, a glue gun, some duct tape, whatever we can find.
About right.
Because we are diving deep into the world of guerrilla filmmaking with Michael W. Dean's $30 Film School.
Love that book.
It really is like a love letter to scrappy DIY filmmaking, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Yeah, from the
Fancy.
first page, you can just feel Dean's punk rock energy.
Ah.
He's all about, chucking that rule book out the window, challenging those big budget norms and just making things happen.
And he doesn't just tell you to make a film for keep. He actually gives you the tools, the mindset to completely rethink how you approach the whole filmmaking process.
He does. And it's inspiring, really.
For sure.
Take his whole yes and philosophy.
Mm.
And this isn't just some, empty feel-good mantra. This is about cultivating a creative mindset, right?
Yeah.
Where limitations, they actually become these springboards for innovation.
Totally. And he even has that great anecdote, I think it's right near the beginning of the book, about using a broom handle as a boom mic.
Classic.
Have you ever, I don't know, walked around your house looking at a broom thinking, that could be a key piece of filmmaking
That
equipment?
never crossed my mind.
Exactly. But that's Dean's point. When you're forced to work with what you've got, you unlock these ingenious solutions you'd never have thought of otherwise.
Absolutely. That whole idea of creative problem solving being born out of necessity.
Mm.
And he takes that same unconventional thinking into fundraising, which can be, let's face it, a little intimidating for indie filmmakers.
It can be, especially if you're, used to just having a shoestring budget or maybe even no budget at all. How do you even begin to approach that?
Right. But Dean reminds us that, fundraising isn't just for these Hollywood bigwigs. He gets into some really unique tactics. I mean, have you ever considered, tapping into nonprofit status for your film?
I mean, it's not something you think about every day.
Or how about bartering skills?
There you go.
You're good at something. Right. Use it. But one thing that stuck with me, and this might sound kind of basic, but he really hammers home the importance of having a killer mission statement.
I actually highlighted that part.
Right. Because it's not just about the budget. It's about getting people on board with your vision. Yeah.
Totally. It's like clear communication. It matters whether you're asking a friend for a small donation or you're pitching to a potential investor.
Exactly. And of course, Dean wouldn't be Dean without a little humor. Right.
Are you talking about that letter he wrote to the airline, begging for free plane tickets for his film tour?
I am.
I mean, hey, a long shot, but you got to admire his persistence.
Persistence, resourcefulness, and that ability to just think way outside the box. Those are recurring themes throughout the book. And that same approach, he applies it to building a crew too, especially when you're working with little to no budget.
Yeah, he's all about cultivating that gang mentality, right? Treating your collaborators well, even if you can't pay them big bucks. It's about food, appreciation, that shared vision. It goes a long way.
For sure. Though he's also realistic, especially when it comes to the ever-present hope of interns.
Oh, he does not sugarcoat that.
Not at all.
He's like, assume they're gonna flake. Have your backup plans ready. He's not trying to scare you off, but on a low budget set, you can't afford to be left hanging.
And that circles back to, strong leadership and communication being so important, especially when you've got people who are generously giving their time.
Right. No room for diva directors on a $30 film set, right?
Exactly.
And speaking of directing, I love how Dean really embraces that whole get the shot mantra. He even suggests, sometimes you just have to appease those difficult personalities on set, at least until you've got their scenes.
Hey, pick your battles, right?
Exactly.
Sometimes you just got to make a judgment call. Is it worth the energy, or can you find a workaround and keep things moving?
It's a crucial skill, for sure, regardless of your budget. And along those lines, he is such a big advocate for redundancy. Always bring backups of everything. Always.
It's like that saying, two is one and one is none.
So true.
Especially with gear, right?
No, absolutely. And it's funny because for as much as we're talking about Dean's resourcefulness being so inspiring, he also really emphasizes that you've got to be decisive, especially on a fast-paced set.
For sure. Time is money, even when you don't have any money.
Right. And here's a curveball for aspiring filmmakers. Dean argues that good sound is more important than picture-perfect visuals, which I gotta admit, that surprised me a little.
Yeah, it's interesting, right?
What do you think?
I think it makes a lot of sense when you actually stop and consider it.
Okay, I'm listening.
Think about it. You could have the most visually stunning film in the world, right? But if the audio is terrible,
That's a no-go.
it's going to be really hard to keep people engaged, right?
Takes you right out of it.
Whereas good audio, it just sucks you in. Like
Yeah.
you can elevate even the simplest scene, you know?
For sure. There have definitely been times where I've walked out of a screening because I just like couldn't hear what was going on.
Exactly. It's distracting.
The worst.
And the good news is you don't need like a Hollywood level soundstage to get decent audio.
That's good to hear because those are a little hard to come by.
Dean gets into some really practical microphone techniques, even using simple equipment. A boom mic. You can make that work. Lav mics.
Yeah.
Super useful.
It's about using what you've got.
Exactly. And speaking of accessible solutions, he doesn't leave you hanging when it comes to post-production either.
What does he suggest?
Affordable editing software. He stresses that you don't need a fancy studio to cut together a great film.
Especially these days.
Right. The software that was once like way out of reach for most indie filmmakers is now so much more accessible. Dean even talks about iMovie.
I know, right? It's all right there at your fingertips. But, technology is only part of the equation. What I found really inspiring was his own journey with self-distribution. Like, he doesn't shy away from those unconventional tactics.
Like touring with his film.
Exactly.
To connect with audiences directly.
It's such a good example of how, like, the whole media landscape is changing, right? Filmmakers have options now. You can carve your own path.
You don't have to wait for permission anymore. So I'm curious, since we're talking about Dean's like unconventional wisdom, what advice from the book really resonated with you?
Yeah.
What jumped out as like super useful?
Honestly, it's that whole unwavering emphasis on resourcefulness.
Totally.
But he's not just talking about being financially resourceful, which obviously is important, but like he encourages you to really see the potential in everything and everyone around you.
It's a mindset shift.
For sure. It's about spotting those opportunities that other people might overlook. It's about turning those limitations into like creative fuel.
Absolutely. It's almost like taking that guerrilla filmmaking approach and applying it to life.
I love that. But okay, let's be real. Filmmaking, especially in a shoestring budget, it comes with challenges.
Yeah.
Rejections, setbacks, that moment when your meticulously crafted broom-handled boom mic falls apart in the middle of a shoot. How does Dean deal with those inevitable bumps in the road?
He keeps it real.
That's important.
He doesn't shy away from the fact that filmmaking is hard.
Mm.
Dean talks about perseverance. He talks about holding on to that passion even when things get tough. He wants you to ask yourself, what seemingly crazy idea have you been putting off because it felt impossible or too expensive?
He's basically saying, what's stopping you?
Right.
Maybe it's time to dust off that old script, reach out to that potential collaborator, or just take that first step towards making your vision a reality.
He's all about embracing that audacity, that willingness to experiment and take risks.
Because sometimes the most unconventional path leads to the most rewarding destination. And that's what I love about $30 Film School. It's not really about the budget, is it?
It's about the mindset.
Exactly. It's about approaching filmmaking and maybe even life itself with a sense of playfulness, resourcefulness, and a belief in what's possible.
And that's a pretty powerful message.
It's about saying yes to the adventure, even if you don't have all the answers, even if you have to use a broom handle as a boom mic along the way.
Because ultimately, it's not about the gear or the budget. It's about the story you want to tell and connecting with an audience who needs to hear it.
And that's something that anyone can do, regardless of their experience or their bank account.
So go out there and make some movie magic. The world needs your stories.
And that, my friend, is the bottom line.